So thank you so much for joining me. Another episode of a day or a week in the life of a graphic designer. And apologies, it's been much longer than I wanted it to be since I did the last episode. I think it's been over 6 months. That's a good thing because it means I've been busy, I've had projects I've thrown myself into, and something I've done, which I'll share with you, will be the first part of this stream, is from time to time as designers we look at our portfolio and sometimes we want to take it in a new direction, maybe attract a different kind of work. It's something we review from time to time, and I did that with my portfolio and put quite a bit of effort into to trying to attract, to niche down a little bit to attract a different kind of business. So I'll share that with you soon. But whether you're watching this recorded or you're here able to enjoy the live stream, thanks for joining and thanks for watching. So hopefully you can see what I'm sharing here. This you may be familiar with, is part of a homepage on my website. And I'll jump into the portfolio, and this is something that's changed quite a bit since my last episode on this channel. I've really tried to attract boutique businesses and businesses that are going for a certain look and feel for their brand identity. So either quite high end or luxurious. And I've removed lots of things from my portfolio which were good examples in their own right, but maybe they didn't quite fit in with the kind of client I wanted to attract. So to attract a certain type of client or work, logically you have to show that, and so that's what I've tried to do here. So some of these I've actually represented, spruced up the mock-ups a little from past projects that you may recognize, and some are new projects that I've worked on over the last 8 or 9 months. So as I scroll through, hopefully there's a kind of a certain aesthetic, a certain look and feel. Although it's not all one color or one style, you've got quite a mixture of work, especially with a brand identity. You've got a lettermark logo here. You've got something that's quite minimal, that's showing with Foret & Co. That's really just using type. There's no symbol at all. You've got a signature style. You've got all sorts of styles, but I hope that you see a kind of a common thread that ties them together, which is they're quite simple. They have one focus. There's not too much going on. Some are quite decorative, quite detailed, but it's all high-end kind of luxury brands. There isn't a jumble of corporate work in here. There's not brochures I've done. Some of my clients are, for example, surveyors. I've tried to take some of those examples out so that as you look through, you've got a clear expectation of a kind of work and a kind of style that I'm competent at producing. So as a designer, that can be quite difficult. Sometimes you have a tendency to want to show everything you're able to do and to put it all out there. And you don't want to niche down too much so that a potential client looks at your site and they come to the conclusion you can't do what they need. But I've found it's a careful balancing act, and this is where I've arrived at the moment. I'm really trying to attract more of this kind of work. And actually I'll spend a little bit of time for 1 or 2 of these projects just showing you. I'm going to click to open this one. The process behind the scenes. So if you create a logo that's as simple as this, it's type only, how do you customize it enough that you've not just taken a font off of the internet and typed out your client's name, perhaps played with the spacing and presented it straight to them, which on very rare occasions is acceptable, is what's needed. But often, to make something distinct, you've got to bespoke it at least a little. So I'm going to go through, I think this will be one of the examples. I'll show you behind the scenes how I've kind of arrived at this. I'm very much against bespoking something in a way that you're just decorating it. You're adding something that doesn't really fit. And if you've got a really nice font as a starting point, how do you avoid actually spoiling that for the sake of customizing it for a client? So I'll run through a little bit of my process with you, and actually that's going to be the theme of the next course that I release on Skillshare. It's a trend that I'm a big fan of at the moment, particularly with serif typefaces, as we have here with the orchid. If you add a ligature from a signature script to a serif and a few other tasteful customizations, you can make it look really unique, but in a tasteful, elegant way without detracting from it. So I love that, because you're enhancing, you're not doing anything to spoil what are quite often really well balanced professional fonts. So this is an example I'm a big fan of. This is the kind of standard that I'm looking to produce logo and brand identity projects to at the moment. And I like to present it with lots of context, lots of imagery, kind of showing the theme, the feel, the way this brand would work in the real world, rather than what I do in the past was maybe one or two generic mock-ups, gold foil or something like that, but it wouldn't really show the brand in context. So that's a nice example there. Another one, C Interiors. If I open this is a great example, I think, of context. Really encapsulates the kind of the mood of the brand identity. And this here, this gold foil mock-up, which looks really strong. This was, I think, one of the only mock-ups I had created before, when I presented this previously in my portfolio. So this page here, we've kind of mocked up some of these brand board sheets. We've done the same here. As you scroll through, you get such a flavour of the way this branding would work and would be applied. So this is now the way I want to try to present all of my projects. Been running through my portfolio. I've changed most of them over, taken them, not added anything to the brand identity, just spent a bit more time presenting it living and breathing where I hadn't done that already. So I think this makes a big difference to my portfolio, and this is the kind of client that I'm trying to attract, someone who would appreciate and make use of this. So to me, that's looking pretty good, and using plenty of stock photography. This is C Interiors, so we've got lots of interior design here. I've also mocked up the stationery at the end. This, I think, gives a real flavour of what you could expect, the end deliverable when a client works with me. So how far do you niche down? Here I've chosen boutique businesses, although some of my favourite clients are actually they're corporate businesses. Quite often they want you to sign non-disclosure agreements, so you may not be able to share that work in your portfolio anyway. And I tend to think, if you're a boutique business or a startup, if you were someone like this holistic health company here, if you see examples of work a designer's done for for very corporate companies, I don't think it resonates. And I think if you look through a portfolio and you're seeing just boutique-y brands, smaller scale work, I think you'd come to the conclusion that designers are a better fit for you. And so far, I think I've had that kind of result since rolling out the new portfolio. More inquiries for the kind of work that I'm interested in, and less for the work that I'm happy to do, but I'm not really, that's not what I want to fill my diary with. That's not what I'm going out of my way to attract. So, I mean, the theme of this channel is a day in the life of a graphic designer, a real look at what we have to do behind the scenes to run a successful business. And I think this is a big part of it, spending time presenting your work in the right way and really thinking about the kind of clients that you want to attract. Let's jump out. I'm going to show you one more example. Kintley Collection. So this is a bridal wear brand, and we've got some brand board pages and some really nice mock-ups here. This is about as light and as pastel-y as I've ever gone with a brand. So there's a trend at the moment to use really light, almost washed out colours, and it creates a very light, elegant feel. But this page here, for example, you really have to almost squint to see the brand clearly. And it's almost, for me, it's on the border of being difficult to read. I think legibility is a bit of an issue. So I've done it here. I've pushed it as far as I kind of dare. But sometimes I've come across work where you have like an ivory logo shown on white, and it's so faint. I do worry that it's kind of crossed the boundary. It's not practical. It's too washed out. So for me, for my money, this is as light and as washed out as I'm prepared to take it. If a client said to me, "This is nice, but could we wash it out just a little more? Could we lighten it?" I'd say I can't do that for you. You would literally have clients or customers struggling to read your material. So this is as far as I push it. But I really like, again, the mock-ups, some nice bridal stock photography we've shown alongside the logo here, so you really get a flavour of it. And just a few simple identity elements. Here's a brand mark, or a sub-mark I should say, created to kind of complement and work along with the main logo. And just a few elements, a few colours in the colour palette, but showing it living and breathing, it works really well, and it feels like quite a versatile, complex identity. So this is another example where, if I show you the logo here, again we've got a ligature that's been added to otherwise standard serif type. And I'm going to open Illustrator and I'll show you behind the scenes kind of a quick look at the method for doing this. Even though my next Skillshare class will cover this in more detail, I'll just give you a sneak peek at the process for doing this here. So let's say this is the font that I've arrived at, that I want to use. Let's say I've played with the kerning, I'm happy with the spacing, happy with the weight I've chosen. Well, anyone else could take this font off of the internet and they could just type out their brand name and they'd have close to the same thing. So how do you customize it tastefully and without making gimmicky changes that aren't really adding value to the look of the logo? And that's where I love this idea of taking a script font, or you could hand draw this if you wanted, but I like to find a script font that I feel will pair nicely, and I simply type out the same letter. So the K I wanted to customize, and I'll type out that K, outline the font, and then just drag it and see what room there is to swap out some of the portions of that serif typeface with portions of the script of the ligature. And sometimes just by dragging, positioning, resizing, you can arrive at something that you can see immediately is going to work quite well. And sometimes you have to fine tune it further. You may have to stretch or elongate a certain part of it to make it fit. In this example, I think it fit quite well. So you can already see here this leg of the K, if that loops round, and it doesn't have to touch, it could just sweep underneath the eye, but I quite liked it when it's touching the eye, and then I actually modified the eye so that there's a kind of seamless link between the two. And you can see that if I jump down here to the end result, and it's really elegant. It's amazing how it feels part of almost an original character. It's not something that you look and you think that's been added on after the fact. It really works well together. I've reduced with Shape Builder a little bit of the eye there, just so that it feels seamless. And I mean, I'm really happy with that. It's a small, simple customization, but it now gives it just that bespoke extra touch. And if you pick the right ligature, I think it perhaps makes the overall logo feel a little more feminine, a little more elegant maybe. So I think a good change, a good customization to make. I could have taken it a step further, so it doesn't have to be a single letter you use. I could have, for example, if I duplicate this here, I could have explored other characters, and you know, there's countless fonts, script fonts you can use, so you could run through lots of these. An N, for example, I don't think that's compatible with an uppercase serif N, but you can run through letters. The T, not really doing anything. The L, there's a possibility. When you find one and you wonder, would this work? Just drag it over the top, play with the positioning, and see what can be done. So that L, for example, I think that could work quite nicely. If I positioned it maybe round about there. And what I would do is outline the type for our underlying serif font, and I need to outline the type for that script font as well. And with them both outlined, if you make sure you have them both selected, use the Shape Builder tool, Shift M, and you can do it roughly at first just to see if the idea works. Hold Alt so that you're removing, and just start deleting away portions of those characters that you don't need, and see what you're left with. So that's quite nice. I think that's got good potential. I've got two options. I could delete this here, and that's actually really nice. Could have added that to the main logo, but you'll see I placed the second line of that logo, collection. I tuck that in under the K. So actually I couldn't have done that, or if I did, I'd have had to find a new way to position collection. And another consideration would be if I had the two together, if I draw a line so it's more obvious, you can see that you know, they're ending all over the place at different points. So I'd probably want to shrink that down, and just try to have those loops end at around the same base point. So the more letters you customize, kind of the more work you have to do to make sure they balance nicely, that there's a consistency to the way you've customized them. But even so, it's great fun. I'm really enjoying making these kind of customizations. Let's just show you quickly what that might look like if I shrunk this down. And you can see why I said, you know, you do kind of a quick run to see if it might work first, and then later you go back and you fine tune when you're sure it's an idea you want to run with. Shrink that down some more. And yeah, somewhere around there. Again, if I bring up the Shape Builder, delete away, and I'd want to haven't positioned that quite as well. We've got, it looks almost like a chunk taken away now from that serif L, so I then want to delete that too. And yeah, something like that wouldn't be bad, together with the K we had from this version here. Potentially that would work quite nicely. So that's an example of the kind of customizations I'm enjoying making at the moment to this brand here, the Kindly collection. I'll show you one more example. This is another very simple customization. This is for the orchid. which is a kind of well-being spa. And if you look, I think it's on this board here, just the original type. To me, there's nothing special about that. It's really nice. It's well suited to the brand, but with just a few customizations, for me, this works so much better. But they're tasteful. They're not adding needless detail, and they're actually elevating the brand. So, what customizations did I make here? Well, similar approach to the one I just demonstrated with the Kindly collection. We're taking a Serif script font, and we're just positioning it and looking for clever ways, for any opportunities to further customize that type, to swap elements out to make it look more elegant. So you can see the first thing I'd done was dramatically reduce the tracking to bring the characters closer together, and by doing that it kind of opened up this little opportunity here. And if I drag away, you can see this is the portion that I'd used from a script font. So we've taken just that leg of VR, and again I've kind of deleted away and made it look like it's seamlessly overlapping and blending into the next character along, which I feel kind of helps to better sell the effect and the customized environment. You can play with different options. Something else I think I did here, I looked at this section with the HID, and I believe I deleted away. See if I can quickly replicate this for you. I think I deleted away the top and bottom of the eye, and then I've just taken from the H those anchor points, dragged them across and sealed them up so they connect. It's quite unusual, it's quite stylized, but I really like that. So they kind of connect with the D there, and you've got this this eye that's tucked away inside. So that was another, just a little customization I made, but actually I think that works really well. And then V, instead of having it hover up here, which it could do, I've tucked that inside the O, which I think really tightens up the whole lockup. And again, I think that's a nice touch. So there we have the end result. And you saw the way that looked when it was used in context with different mock-ups. So yeah, 2 examples I'm really happy with. If you'd like to see in a little more detail how to do that, or some more ideas for customizing simple type for elegant brands, then check out my my next course when that comes out on Skillshare. Hopefully no more than a month from now. So I'm keeping an eye on the time. We've got just 7 minutes left on the live stream. I'm going to end this at 4:30. I do have something else to show you before we finish up. But for those that are viewing, especially if you're viewing live, pop me a message in the chat. If you have any questions, something you want me to answer, or just to say hi, feel free to pop a message in there. I can see that on the side of my screen. So the last kind of thing I have to share with you, I promised, if any of you read the kind of trailer for this episode, some simple logos I've been working on, which I've just shown you, but then also the most complex logo that I've ever designed. So I've gone fairly complex before. I think I've designed logos with a lot more detail than most designers would be comfortable to put in. But I have a course on that. For me, the rationale behind it is if you use a kind of responsive approach, if you make sure that even a detailed logo works at different levels, then you can get away tucking a bit more detail in, so that when the logo's seen at larger sizes, you think, wow, there's a lot of added added detail, added goodness here. But it has to work at small sizes as well. That's kind of the caveat. So here it is. I'm going to open it for you now. This is by far the most complex logo I've ever designed. And it's quite something. The client worked with me to create this. It was a very bespoke piece. She actually pulled some samples and references from from bits of architecture, from interior design, patterns that have been used in different historical buildings, and we kind of use those as the theme. And I hand drew this. If I open a different version and zoom in, you can see just how much detail there is. This was all hand drawn on Adobe Fresco on my iPad Pro, and then scanned in and kind of digitally manipulated to work as a core part of this logo. So I know what some of you may be thinking, it's too much detail, it's not a logo, or there are certain situations that you just won't be able to see that detail. But here for me is the kind of the question whether this is acceptable, whether it works professionally or not. And that's, if you zoom out, if you shrink it right the way down, I think I'll do this by just resizing my window for you, does it still work the smaller it gets? And if the answer to that is yes, then why not have that extra detail tucked away for when it's at larger sizes? So when it's at this size here, depends what device you're viewing this stream on, you get the TS monogram. You can see maybe vaguely, if you squint, you kind of vaguely see this shape that's surrounding it, and you get a sense that there's some texture or detail there, but you can't make it out. And then the logo type at the bottom, the brand name. Now, as long as you can see those elements, then you can identify the brand. So the logo works at that small size. And where there are situations that you can use it larger in all its glory, well, then you've got this amazing added detail. So it's quite controversial. I know not everyone would agree that even is a logo, and when I provide this to my client, I also provide these versions here. So this is your traditional logo. That would work. You could have that printed on on the side of a ballpoint pen. That's your traditional logo. But if that's a core part of what we've created here, is it acceptable to have all this kind of added detail surrounding it? Well, in this case, it works really well. The client's able to use this. We're even going to create a slightly simplified version so that we can have it printed in gold foil on business cards. So some of the lines will need to be thickened, some of the details simplified. But if it works, it works. So I'm someone that's always quite happy to try and push for boundaries, as long as it doesn't break principles. And this is by far the most complex logo I've ever designed. But I kind of qualify that by adding, I have given the client the standalone brand mark here. I've also given a logo type only version that could be used in certain situations. And then this version, this lockup here. So given that whole logo suite together, that can be used in whatever situation is needed, and the client can enjoy using that. And what a kind of impressive, highly detailed logo. Not something you get to work on every day. So quite an unusual project, but something I'm really proud of. I think that's come off nicely in the end. So that's it. We've come to half past. Thank you for joining for this episode. Looking forward to creating the next course on Skillshare, maybe showing you a little more of a process behind this trend, combining serif fonts with ligatures. I think it's a great solution for brands that they need something simple, but it can't be too simple. It needs to be bespoke in some way. So for me and for some of the brands I work for, it's the perfect solution. Have a look out for that course. I'll post it on the YouTube channel, on my Instagram, so you should be able to find out if you're following me as soon as that releases. So thanks again for joining today. Hope you've enjoyed this little look behind the scenes, and hope to see you in the next, what should we call it, the next episode. So thanks again for joining.